Hi, my name is Trumer, and today I'm going to present my project regarding controller remapping settings in Dark Souls 2 and the evolution of controller accessibility and controller settings in video games. So, the way I came about this idea was at first when I played the video game called Dark Souls 2. It's a video game developed by From Software, and it's the second installment of the Dark Souls series, which has 3 games. Something that made this game stand out among the rest, in not the most positive way, is the fact that there is no option to rewind controller settings if you play on a gamepad, such as the Nintendo Switch Pro controller or a DualShock 4 gamepad. Uh, these being my input devices of choice for games like this, and having muscle memory from previous Dark Souls games, which had different controls than this one, it made my experience pretty negative, and it led me to not enjoy the game as much and even not finish the video game. So, I believe that by giving the player the ability to change their controller mapping and change which button does which action inside the game, that would greatly increase the experience of most players with Dark Souls 2. To know if this was a good idea, I conducted a poll based on the research question. Very basic. Would remapping buttons in Dark Souls 2 while using a gamepad controller improve the experience of players and help with accessibility and ease of use? I ran a poll with several questions regarding accessibility, enjoyment, controls, if they finished the game or not, have they played Dark Souls games before or not, and the results were were showing a pretty natural trend towards the fact that people that didn't finish the game were not comfortable with the controllers. A lot of people would have liked to be able to remap their controls, and they think it would have improved their experience with the game. And it also showed that players that didn't have experience with Dark Souls games had a lot of trouble getting used to the controls, and it contributed to them not finishing the game or not enjoying it. After this, I decided to create a wireframe prototype to show what I would create if I could create a controller remapping screen on Dark Souls 2, and this is what I came up with. You may notice there's 2 screens here. They're pretty much the same, they just highlight a little bit of what the functionality of the screen would be. So you would have a list of each action that a player can do mapped to a certain button, and you could swap each action with another action, which would in turn swap the button they're controlled with. So in this example, I swapped the heavy attack control from the left trigger to the B button, which makes heavy attack with your left hand the B button, and use item the left trigger. This wireframe takes inspiration from controller settings menus from different games, including things like Steam Big Picture Mode and the Guilty Gear Strive. And it's a rough draft representing what I wanted to do later on. The style guide for my more finished prototype is like this. This is the font I utilized. It's really similar to the font utilized in the main game. And the colors were inspired by the actual menus of the game. This is the somewhat realistic prototype I made. I created it based on the previously designed wireframe, which some polish aspects, like removing the lines. I decided that instead of removing the lines, highlighting the button that is binded to the action you are selected at the moment would be more clean and less cluttered on the screen. It looks a lot better like this. The colors and the layout, I took inspiration from the original Dark Souls 2 menus, which don't include a page like this, but the layout is relatively similar, although a little bit cleaner design and less cluttery user interface aspects, which makes it easier to read. And finally, for my moonshot idea, I decided to go a step further. Why stop at Dark Souls 2? Why stop at specific game controls? So I was thinking, what if there was a controller who you could swap out the physical layout of the controller, which would be things like switching out where the left stick is placed, where the D-pad is placed, which is something that a lot of controllers have differently, such as the Xbox controllers and the DualShock controllers having the left stick and the D-pad in opposite places, which can mess up a lot of people's muscle memory. And what if this controller was swappable parts, such as the Astro C40 TR, which is something I used as inspiration for this? What if you could what if you could remap the functionality of each button to the functionality of another existing button in the controller on a hardware level instead of on a specific software level? Because at the moment what exists is that consoles let you remap the controller specifically to that console, and Steam does that too, and games do that to specific games. But if I like one control layout, why can't I just use that for any console, any platform? And this controller would let you do that because it would change what each button does at the level of the controller and not at the software level. So when you start up a new game, you already know which button is set to which action. You would not have to change the controls in the engine or in the game or in the launcher or the console, because you would have already changed those controls physically in your controller. And I thought having multiple profiles for that would be useful as well, since different game genres require different controller layouts, and you would be able to swap them out on the fly. Well, thank you for listening. That is my user experience design project, the button remapping for Dark Souls 2, and universal button remapping controller.